Tourette's podcast is not a medical advice show. It's a show about experiences. In the course of that, we may talk about medications or therapies or stories from the doctor's office, but don't mistake any of that for medical advice or direction. It's not. Get that only from people or places licensed or certified to give it, not from a massively fun and action-packed podcast about our life experiences, such as...
So when the episodes are going out, especially with season 2, I'm noticing I was picking up a few of the tics from other people.
Apologies.
Yeah.
This is Tourette's podcast, made possible with support of the Tourette Association of America and part of the Geeks Rising Network. Hey, it's Ben. Big shout out to Laura in Brazil for sending me her class presentation on Tourette Syndrome. She totally said it was inspired by the podcast, which I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, I think, when she was putting the presentation together. And she just gave it on Thursday and she sent it to me. It's up on YouTube.
I'm going to tell what is Tourette Syndrome was discovered in 1885 by Gilles de la Tourette. There is a French doctor that described the disease as involuntary and compulsive tics. They can be motor tics or vocal tics.
I'll post that link in the show notes with this episode because it's a great template for other class presentations. She did an awesome job. She's really detailed and she gives her class really great and diverse examples from the real world about TS and what it looks like, and she weaved in clips of Brad Cohen and Billie Eilish and just made it relatable and human with really familiar points. But the angle to this presentation was that she had to deliver it in English. That was the assignment for English class. Again, she lives in Brazil and she did amazingly. So Laura, thanks. That is awesome. And if anybody else is doing a project or a class presentation or anything on TS, and if it's something you can share, I would love to link to it. I'm sure we already have some really great templates and examples to go off of in classroom education on TS, but it can't hurt to keep tracking new ones down. So if you've done a presentation for the class, I'd love to see it. tourettespodcast@gmail.com is my email. And you can also contact me through tourettespodcast.com. I've gotten lots and lots of messages and tweets and so on regarding Motherless Brooklyn, the new Edward Norton movie. It's adapted from the Jonathan Lethem book. In the movie, Norton, who also directed the film, is the main character and has TS. The character has TS. Well, I can't really comment in any informed way because I haven't seen it yet. I'm flying out to Los Angeles for a fairly intimate screening of the movie, which will receive a special introduction from Ed Norton himself, which is awesome. He's been really communicative and cool with the Tourette Association of America, and he's going to be there. Ed Norton himself introducing the movie, and last I checked, there were still tickets available to this. The date is October 30th. The location is Pacific Theaters at the Grove. The address is 189 The Grove Drive, and it starts at 8 p.m. Again, October 30th, Los Angeles, California. And you should show up early, even if you bought a ticket. Just to avoid any capacity issues, show up early with your ticket and get your seat. So how do you buy a ticket? It'll be on tourettespodcast.com in the show notes with this episode. Or if you're following the Tourette Association on Instagram, the link is in their bio right now. Or you can find it at tourette.org/links. And just scroll down and click the button that says Motherless Brooklyn Screening. I'm excited, and I will be doing things with cameras and microphones and such, so I'll be bringing things back to talk about, and I'm excited about it. Again, October 30th, Los Angeles, California. Intimate screening of Motherless Brooklyn with an introduction from Ed Norton himself. Okay, got a question here from Wilhelm, who says, "Hey, Tourette's podcast. I was curious about whether you have ever talked to someone with a special tic, sometimes known as a blackout tick. You may know this already, but it's when someone with Tourette syndrome has a special tic where certain parts of their body basically shut down for a very short period of time, so that they basically fall unconscious, like passing out for a brief period of time. Again, you might totally already know this, and you may have talked to someone about it before. I've only just started listening to your podcast. I've just finished season 1, episode 2. So yeah, basically, have you ever interviewed someone with a tic similar to this?" And that's a question from Wilhelm. And not as such, but maybe. The closest I can think of is my paralysis tick, where I literally just freeze. I mean, it hasn't happened in a long time, fingers crossed, but I would basically just hold my breath, be totally silent, often with my eyes wide open, and it would just look weird to anybody around. Luckily, and I say luckily, it mostly just happened when I was on the phone at work. I remember I was interviewing this guy, Jim, in Caswell Beach, North Carolina, and it happened during that interview. And it was so awkward and embarrassing because this is back when I was still not talking openly about TS, which, I mean, talking about it in a simple way, that moment really probably would have helped. But a full-on blackout tick, if that's different, I don't think we've covered here. Correct me if I'm wrong. In either way, does anybody relate to Wilhelm's question, just where parts of your body go dead, I guess, for some period of time, like totally out of your control? Tourette'sPodcast@gmail.com and put the word blackout in the subject line. Shout out to my cousin Justice, who wears his Tourette awareness bracelet everywhere he goes, so much that the letter's rubbed off and it's nothing but a teal ring at this point. So we're getting him a replacement, but just want to shout out his name for being so dedicated to awareness that his Tourette gear has battle scars. Okay, the conversation this week is with Amanda, who comes to your rescue if you need a positive outlook on TS. She's focused on that pretty much throughout here. And she's a great example. She's going for a career in veterinary medicine, just a really good role model. And I guess what really got me when she and I started talking a while back is she wasn't comfortable talking about her Tourette diagnosis until relatively recently in terms of being open about it. And she said she really related to Maddie, who is Tourette's podcast Old School. So old school, she's season 1, episode 1. And she set the tone for this entire podcast and why it might serve a purpose in making Tourette syndrome relatable and understandable. And so I think about Maddie a lot, and I love it when I hear somebody cite her as a point of reference. But Amanda, who we're about to hear from, she really keeps it bright and just has a really refreshing outlook and just framing it all in a different way. So this is me and Amanda.
My name is Amanda. I'm 22. I am from Southern California, Orange County area, to be more specific. And currently, I just graduated from college in April. And I'm currently working at an animal hospital, and that's been really fun. I'm pursuing veterinary medicine.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice. So you graduated recently. So veterinary medicine, what's ahead for you professionally?
I just finished my application for vet school, so I'm now kind of in the waiting process of the cycle and hoping to hear some good news in the coming months.
That's awesome.
But I've always known that veterinary medicine has been what I wanted to do. Ever since I was a kid, I have artwork from like kindergarten and through grade school. It's just I don't really even know how to explain it. It's just always been something that I've wanted to pursue. And college was a great experience, and there it kind of affirmed what I wanted to do with my passion for the sciences and critical thinking. So I'm really looking forward to the next step, and hopefully, like I said, looking forward to hearing some good news soon.
So were you surrounded by animals when you were a kid, or any personal connection that led you in that direction?
Yeah, I had my first pet was a dog. Her name was Daisy, and she was the sweetest thing. Yeah. And I just loved taking care of her and playing with her. And I was always a pretty shy kid. I was very close with my mom. We were kind of attached at the hip. And aside from being around her, being with my dog was the second best thing I could have. And I also grew up with rodents. I had guinea pigs, hamsters, and
cool.
I just loved animals. Yeah, and being outside, watching birds was always super fascinating, and playing with lizards in the backyard. That was a hobby for me. I spent a lot of my time doing that, and just from the course of growing up with pets and knowing that, I would say, laid the foundation for wanting to pursue medicine. And it was kind of a perfect blend that I can do medicine and care for animals and be around them. And as I've gotten further along as far as my experience in the profession, definitely learned a lot about the human component in veterinary medicine. So that's been great. Throughout my college experience, I've really found a love for connecting with people. And so it's great that I kind of get to amalgamate all of that.
So one thing that you said, I think when we first started talking on Twitter, is that you related, this just goes right back to what you were talking about with college, that you related to Maddie from the very first episode of Tourette's podcast and her experiences in college. Do you remember bringing that up and what you related to?
Yeah, mostly I would say the specific component of the fact that she was, I believe, environmental science, if I remember correctly,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing somebody else who also has Tourette's and in STEM, it's a pretty difficult field of study. It's very stressful, and to kind of hear how she navigated her experiences and hearing some of the things she struggled with as a Touretter, and the pressure it puts on you to kind of take in the stress of exams and constantly having to study, and just the rigor of any CSEP program, and still navigating yourself and figuring out what makes you tick, and what just kind of what triggers you and makes you kind of feel isolated even more, because you feel so alone in this big body of people, even in just one program. So I really related to her experience, and it was nice to hear that I wasn't the only one who's struggling with that. And I'm sure beyond her, there's more who are in other programs aside from biology or STEM who go through the same thing. So I just mostly related on the fact that she was studying something very similar to what I was learning, and I was good to hear from somebody else.
So at that time, were you openly talking about your TS? Is this something people knew about you, or was this something that was just kind of your secret, so to speak?
At the time, it was more so of a secret, but hearing Maddie actually empowered me to share with others. And I told a couple of friends who, not so much, that I trusted, I would say, but more so that I felt it wouldn't be their instinct to go off and just flower to people. So in a way, it was that I felt trusted, but in also people who I felt wouldn't think of me any different. Yeah. Most people who I told, they didn't even figure. I would say from throughout the years, I've gotten pretty good at masking and I would say suppressing until I can get on my own, especially in classrooms. There are certain classes I had that were 2.5 hours long. So having to suppress or hide my hand under a sweater. My motor tic, my primary one is I have to strain my wrist a certain way. Yeah. And hiding it under like a lab coat or set a jacket or some sort. And so most people didn't know, but the first time they really told others was kind of in a group setting. I had the privilege of being a student leader in my last year at college, and we had I went to a Christian university, so our training for student leadership was built around kind of a testimony and giving a testimony and sharing our stories with our fellow student leaders. And I came out about it, and it was great, and nobody said anything or thought of me differently. And a couple of people had questions, but they were good questions. Like, they were genuinely curious. So I felt compelled to tell that part about me at the time. And then when I heard Maddie's story, I felt even more empowered to tell more people and to share it. And at the time it was a secret, but Maddie definitely helped me feel more comfortable with who I am and being like, it's okay. And it's a good thing. And it's a part of me, and I'm really proud of it. And now I feel like I can tell anyone, and it's good. I don't have to worry about negative consequences or anything. And so that's good.
God, that is so awesome. That's such a cool story. And I have to think, so you mentioned being introverted, and you mentioned, masking your tics. It's really stressful because the point of masking it is so they're less conspicuous, and so less people are looking, and to kind of, I guess know whether you're accomplishing anything or not with that is to also kind of be maybe hyper conscious of everybody around you and how they're regarding you, and are they picking up on this? Am I masking things appropriately? Which adds extra stress. And I mean, I can see that playing with the introversion. I mean, have you ever thought about it that way?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Socially speaking, I would say in high school, it was a bigger challenge just because I didn't really spend a lot of time with friends. College definitely made me a more of an outgoing introvert, I would say. Yeah. But even then, feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to do this tick right now. It's really bothering me. And then I have to like go to the bathroom really quickly. And there was a time where I remember around finals time being so stressed out and having to go to the bathroom like every few minutes just because it was a really anxious time, and socially thinking like, what are they thinking is going on. Like it would be a quick trip type of thing. And so I mean, definitely, and even talking, I would say it's gotten better, but within this last year, I've noticed I've had articulation issues, especially at work, I would say, not so much school, but with coworkers, sometimes having to speak with them, I get this little instant, I guess, like social anxiety. It's kind of, I don't know if that's the right word, but I kind of panic in my head a little when I talk, and and I'm it's just an assumption that it's connected with Tourette's. I haven't gotten that specifically diagnosed as something, as far as like a and I know Tourette's, like obsessive, there's like a separate OCD specifically for Tourette's.
Are you talking about Tourettic OCD?
Yeah. There's something more specific. In regards to that, I haven't gotten a specific diagnosis for my articulation difficulties, but that's something that I've been navigating recently. And so socially, definitely my introversion has, I would say, played a part in it. And I don't think that I'm introverted because of Tourette's. I just think it's a part of my personality, and it's just kind of added to a separate layer of stress in regards to,
Yeah. Well, so who knew? Were there friends growing up who discussed it with you, or I guess let's start by what age did you start showing tics, and what was the reaction?
I don't remember the age. I was really young, though. I remember being early in elementary school, maybe second or third grade. I don't remember a ton from that time, but I remember the tic that made my family want to get this checked out was I was biting. And I don't know if you can maybe assume, but I hate being in trouble. I hate making mistakes. I wouldn't want to intentionally hurt other people. And so they thought it was out of character for me. And so they took me in, and I remember being in an office. I don't remember if it was a neurologist or another specialist, but I remember the doctor being unfamiliar, so I'm assuming it was a neurologist. It's kind of odd. As I've gotten older, my mom and we haven't really talked about it much, or I haven't really asked about it, but that's my vague memory of how I got the diagnosis. So it was early elementary school.
I guess it can kind of go in a couple different directions, to where you either feel that relief because you know what it is, you have your literature now, or there's that sense of, what do we do about this? What does this mean for my future? I mean, do you remember any early conversations about that, or maybe early thoughts that came to your mind about TS and what it means for you in your life?
Gosh, when I was first getting the diagnosis, like I said, I don't remember a ton, but the first time I would say it became apparent to me was in high school, where I would say I played sports. So I was an athlete freshman, sophomore year of high school, and then I got injured, so I stopped, and that really hit me hard. So I would say around like junior year, that was when I was starting to think about, can I continue pursuing my goals of studying veterinary medicine? School is already so much pressure now. Am I going to be able to go to college and succeed? And am I going to be worrying about tics and social aspects and in a job setting? And am I going to be able to have the career I want? And that was certainly concerning. But I would say high school was the first time where I became really knowledgeable of that. If I remember correctly, I believe middle school for me was more. I would say my tics were more latent. So there was a period where I didn't have any at all. And I thought that it was something that just went away in my head. Tics was something, or Tourette's was something that I had when I was a kid, and it was just a child's issue. And then I would just grow out of it and it would be fine. And then high school rolled around and they came up again. And that's when that was probably the highest point of my concerns, I would say.
So what did you end up doing about it at that time? I mean, was it urgent enough to where you felt like you needed to do anything extra, any layers of medication, or did you do anything about it? Or
Yeah, I was actually in high school, I was actually in therapy for a couple of years, not for Tourette's specifically, but for anxiety. And I had depression for some time. And not saying I had it. It always kind of lingers. I don't think mental illness is something that really goes away.
Mm-hmm.
But so I definitely acquired some tools during that time to that even helped with my Tourette's. One thing that I do is I chew gum very frequently. And I don't know this super well. I've tried this a couple of times and it doesn't help me very much. But I think it's like 5 things when you're having like an anxiety issue, like 5 things you can... I think I'm messing this up, but 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, or along those lines.
Yeah.
For me, chewing gum and focusing on like a rhythm, that has helped me. And that's something that I worked with my therapist on. And and that's helped a lot with getting like an instant panicky feeling about a tick.
What is it about a rhythm that, I mean, is it just that it's something that you have to kind of process and think about, or is it something that you find comforting, or where does that come in?
Yeah, I would say it's the thinking that I can put my focus on something else. It's not me focusing on, I have this tick, I have to do it now.
Yeah.
Or thinking about what are other people going to say if I do it right now. Are they going to be thinking that I'm weird because they just don't know? It's putting my attention on counting how many times I can chew and keeping a rhythm and focusing on that. Just putting my attention elsewhere, I would say, is what helps avert.
Does any of this tie in with music or? Yeah,
I love music. I'm not really an artsy person, so I don't personally play anything, but I think it's super cool to hear others play music. And I'm a huge fan. I always have headphones in my ears. And when I was at school or on my way to work, I always listen to music. It's just really relaxing and comforting. And I always have this kind of predilection towards music. And but like I said, I don't play anything that would be really awesome. But yeah, listening to music, I do a lot, and that's helped too. But I also really enjoy reading, just something that relaxes me, and getting immersed in a story and really just diving into something that, again, takes my mind off of having Tourette's or the pressures of a tick and the need to kind of fulfill that urge.
Do you find that they're still kind of persisting, or have they kind of flattened out, or are they going away, getting worse? Where do you find yourself?
So right now, I would say they're more on the milder end. My vocal tics, they're more transient, I would say.
Yeah.
My motor tics are definitely the more problematic for me.
Yeah.
When I was transitioning to college in that summer from high school, that in between period, they were completely gone again, and I was really excited. So I was like, great, I'm going to college. This is awesome. I don't have to worry about it. And then first couple weeks came back, and I had this really painful tic where I had to hold the pencil a certain way, and I had to like strain my hand. And I've actually noticed that one coming back again. I've done it a couple times in the last couple weeks.
So this pencil tic, is it where you kind of have to hold it, and the part that's kind of closest to your fingernail on the side of your finger, you have to put a whole lot of pressure on to where it almost makes like an indentation? Does that happen to be it?
Yeah. Do you have that too?
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely had, just when you said that was the first thing I pictured, and I figured I would try it. But I mean,
you explained it really well. I couldn't really know how to explain it.
That's funny. I've definitely had that kind of off and on. I remember that really seriously when I was in grade school. Yeah. And
that's been really cool, actually, hearing other people's, hearing somebody that has a tic that I had or have, and like, that's really neat. And not the only one who struggles with this particular tic, and it's pain and it's pressure, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say at the moment they come and go. They're not as severe as they were even just a few months ago. So I'm in a good place now. But yeah, it's actually, so when the episodes are going out, especially with season 2, I noticed I was picking up a few of the tics from other people.
Apologies.
But I know that a lot of, no, it's okay. I like hearing about it more so. So it definitely outweighs for me, at least, picking up the tic when I get to hear other people's stories and connect on that note. But but I wonder, there's a thing that I learned about in one of my classes. Are you familiar with mirror neurons?
When written down on paper, the word looks familiar to me, but that's as far as we go. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in class we talked about it with yawning. So, if you see someone yawn, you're kind of enticed. Yeah. So I wonder if there's like a connection with that, hearing a tick or seeing a tick. I wonder if the mirror neurons has something to do with that.
Yeah, it's funny because yawning is kind of the go-to analogy, and it'd be funny if there's some sort of link that's already there. Yeah, I guess I can ask the Tourette researchers who are listening.
Oh, are you connected with them?
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
It's been awesome meeting them, and it's funny. A number of them also have TS themselves, so. They're
awesome.
just bringing that personal context to the science. We'll be right back. The Tourette Association of America has been around since 1972, and today is the premier nonprofit in the U.S. working for all people affected by Tourette and tic disorders. One of the ways that happens is through communications and awareness tools, which is one of the reasons why the Tourette Association is the primary sponsor of this podcast. They help me out a lot, and you can find tons of information on their website, tourette.org, tourette.org. And I want to thank them for their support of Tourette's podcast. How is sleep for you? Have you been a good sleeper for your life, or are you the kind of person
I'm excited you brought this up because I hear your conversations with other people, and I'm like, that's exactly me. Yeah, I don't sleep well at night. I have a very similar perspective as I believe you do. Is I kind of feel like sleeping is I feel like I could be doing something else.
Yeah.
And so I sometimes have troubles at night. But it's gotten better. I've in the last month I've introduced physical activity into my daily regimen. So I go running every day, and that's helped me feel tired at night. And I wake up really early now, more of a morning person.
Yeah.
So sometimes I have trouble falling asleep, but the exercise has definitely been a contributing factor to kind of remediating that.
Okay, so the timing is good, I guess. I brought on a couple other medications that are more geared toward sleep in spite of my attitude with it. Because you referenced it. I don't like sleeping. I like staying up. I like doing things. I like learning. I like reading. It's not just screen time. It could be a book. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Just don't like going to sleep. But just knowing, and I guess it's what they call sleep hygiene. It's like just knowing that, you should be better to yourself. And I went to the doctor and I got some medication to kind of cool me out and then kind of turn my brain off at night, essentially. And I've never been the kind of person who enjoys getting up in the morning at all. But maybe, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, maybe for the first time, maybe ever, I woke up feeling not groggy, feeling kind of energized, feeling kind of okay about the morning and how different it felt, just kind of being kind of alert at that time of day, not just groggy, but alert that time of day.
Yeah.
It definitely kind of changes things. And I guess that speaks to the power of a small change in routine can, kind of lead to a lot of effects. But this is brand new for me too, is that I'm maybe kind of shifting. I still hate sleep, but since I have to do it, I'm maybe being a little bit better about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for me, especially when I was in college, being up late, I always had kind of, I guess you could say, an excuse because I was always studying. I didn't mind staying up till 3 a.m. I felt like I always had so much to do, and that was the excuse for me. Like I have to stay up because I have to study. I have this exam coming up, or I have to finish this homework assignment to be on schedule. And I don't know if this is necessarily part of TS or if this is more like a personality thing, but I like to be very structured with planning how I want my days to kind of go out. And if I was okay with not sleeping, and it just kind of appeased my desire to not sleep, I guess. But since I started working, I actually work 10-hour shifts, so I find it very important to get enough sleep. I don't know if you've experienced this, but going to work tired is extremely difficult.
Oh yeah, I'm a frequent experiencer of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Since kind of opening up about it, have you had other people approach you who have had questions about TS? I guess the real world version of TS and, what it's meant for you? Or is this still kind of a new thing?
I think I haven't had anyone approach me outside of when I've told them, but I haven't really gotten a ton of questions. My one friend that I told not fairly recently, but I would say the most recent person I told, she took it really, really great. And it was kind of, she's a very naturally comforting person.
Yeah.
But the first thing that she told me was, I don't know much about it, but I know that there's a comedian. I don't remember his name.
Samuel Comroe, maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
That made me feel great because it's like, I don't know much about it, but I know of someone who does. And that really made me feel like she recognized that I felt a little isolated.
Yeah.
Because it was difficult to just come out and say it. And that was really great. There was this guy that I dated. When I told him, he was great. He took it really well. And I've always had positive experiences with that, but he had a couple of questions. Again, not knowing, he openly expressed that he didn't know much about it.
Yeah.
And he asked a couple of questions, just what kind of like tics do you have? And that was great sharing. So that's been the extent of the questions that I've received, but it's been good. It's been positive. I know some people don't have that same sort of positivity and good experiences. So I'm really grateful that I've had that so far in my life.
Have you had negative experiences?
I haven't. I feel like I've built negative experiences in my head, maybe. For TS Awareness Month, sometime late in the season, I opened up about it and I made like a post about it on Instagram, and it felt really relieving. It was great. I was like, okay, now everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but everybody who I'm connected with through that site is aware and knows. But I wanted to do it in a way that I wasn't, I don't know how to say it, like sharing a personal story about me in particular. I was doing it with the hopes of inviting other people to educate themselves a bit more. So I have found in my experience that nearly everybody I've told didn't know much about it. And like I said, it's good that, I definitely appreciate that they admitted that they didn't know much about it, but I also, in a sense, wanted to encourage others to learn. And I was doing it in that sense. But in my head, I was like, oh no, everybody knows. Am I bringing upon this? Am I bringing ridicule upon myself now? And I was definitely concerned about that. And getting ready to post, I had it written like a couple of weeks before I actually did it because I was so nervous about that. And I think in my head, I orchestrated scenarios of what if I'm received differently now. And I had a couple of people who I worked with, who I worked at this animal hospital prior. And in that time that I posted about it, I was like, what if this is a factor in letting me come back again? And I certainly, like I said, I think I definitely built these negative experiences in my head. I was definitely doing a little self damage there.
Do you do that a lot? Kind of play out scenarios in your head that have, kind of negative consequences, or not negative consequences, but just sort of negative red tape that you have to kind of cut through. I do that a lot. I think I play out scenarios not to kind of bum myself out and self-defeat, but I think to kind of, I don't know. I'll play out these scenarios. Plan. Yeah, kind of plan, but in a way where anxiety is definitely an operative thing with it. I think maybe anxiety influences me to do that. And in a way that's a little bit more complex than just being risk averse. It's like, I will kind of play out these very realistic possibilities with a series of events, or if I do this, then, like so-and-so might assume this down the road or something, Yeah.
I would say for me, it's similar. If this happens, I want to have a course of action for every scenario. And I'm definitely a planner, and I like to have in mind, what am I going to do if this occurs, or what am I going to do if that doesn't occur? And I would say do that just so I can almost be a step ahead.
Yeah.
But that in that sense, it was definitely damaging. I had it written that post specifically written for a little while, and it took me a while just to hit okay and to move forward, because I knew I wanted to do it and it felt right, and I definitely felt empowered by hearing other people's stories and hear that other people were so open about it.
So what are there, maybe a top one or two things that you do want people to know about TS? That things that you think are maybe a couple missing pieces that would help the general public kind of get there with understanding what it is?
Yeah. Personally, I don't want to speak for everybody else who has Tourette's, but I know for me, I'm 100% open to questions.
Yeah.
Obviously, as long as they're said in a respectful manner.
Yeah.
And not assuming things. Even in one of my vet school applications, one of the supplemental pieces of it, I said that I had Tourette's, and it's a concern. Like, do they think that it's going to affect my ability to be a good doctor? Because do they think I just in the sense of, do they think that it's going to affect my day-to-day ability to be effective? And I think I would say not making assumptions about people, that others who don't have Tourette's know that this is something that somebody struggles with. To not assume anything, to be open to learning, and to approach a person that they're interested in knowing more about. To say, hey, I want to ask you a couple questions if that's okay, but I want to do so out of curiosity and not trying to put you down, or just more out of interest and eagerness to learn more about the other person. And I would say just not making assumptions and being compassionate and understanding. I would say it's always the key. I think even as people who don't have Tourette's, it's always important to be kind to one another and to be understanding of everybody's situation, because everybody has something of some sort. But I would say understanding and openness to learning and willingness to educate yourself.
When you're presenting yourself at the workplace, that there's the nerves, there's the impression that you want to cast and all that, and the masking and all that. I mean, it's just when it kind of consumes you that, oh my God, my TS. When that can really be kind of a holding back element of a career, and just being able to kind of self-accept and identify yourself and get answers for yourself, and then find community and all that. I mean, it's just the amount of growth that can come from just those simple little things is, I mean, I don't want to sound all preachy, but it's, but it just how it's helped me out has been pretty remarkable. And I'm really stoked that you're talking about it and that you're feeling good, being open about it, and and that you have a good attitude about about the public and awareness and all that. I mean, it can be frustrating, but you've kept a really good attitude, and this is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I always I kind of live by this weird I guess perspective of every day I can use it as an opportunity to be better. Yeah. Not just as a person and as Tourette's, but as an individual, just constantly seeking growth. And even in pursuing my career aspiration, I've grown a ton. And I think for other people who have Tourette's who maybe feel like this piece of them is going to hold them back. And I would just hope that others know that it doesn't have to be something that prevents you from moving forward in what you want, because we're people too, and we're fully capable of pursuing anything. And like you said, it's a growth opportunity, and and it's a great experience to navigate yourself and to be introspective and to learn about the things that push you and make you better. And I think for anybody, but I would hope that other people with Tourette's know that they're capable of that as well. Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have that level of self-acceptance and just the sort of ripple effects, I think I think about self-accepting, then getting to know yourself, knowing what you're good at, knowing your limitations is cool. And when you know what you're good at and you feel empowered enough to kind of go after it, don't be shy about showing other people. I mean, I love what you're pursuing. I think it's great. And I love that you have a personal tie with it. And it's something that you knew that, you're going to carve a path for yourself. And you weren't going to let TS be, it's your companion. It's going to be there. It's going to surprise you at times, but it's not going to be the thing that trips you up. And, sometimes people can find advantages from
definitely.
It too.
I love that you called it companion. That's a good word to use.
Yeah, I got that from Melissa C. Water from, I think, maybe episode 3 of season 1. And I hadn't thought about it that way either. I love that word for that.
I love that because even with, I from personal experience, even friends, they have little hiccups, and with this companion, our hiccups are our tics, and I really love that phrasing for it. And that's a really good analogy for it. I mean, even with the notion of self-acceptance, it's a journey. I think for anybody, there's definitely days where I'm sure maybe you have them too, where you're on a really good path, and then one day it does trip you up a little bit, and you think, why did I have to do that, or why couldn't I wait? But knowing that you can always kind of go back and reverse and get back to where you were before. And that's, I think, thinking about it as a companion, that's a really unique way, and I really like that.
Thanks for listening. Thanks so much to Amanda for her time and for the outlook she has. It's just nice to hear. This and all past episodes at tourettespodcast.com, as well as geeksrising.com. Geeks Rising is the amazing podcast network that carries this show, brings it to new audiences. I've got some things in the works with them for the near future. Really good, really fun, really interesting podcasts at geeksrising.com. And a quick reminder about the Improving Research, Improving Lives initiative that the Tourette Association of America has going to raise funds for research, but not in the way where you're making, say, a $50 donation to this ambiguous category called research. I know you've done that before and you're like, where did my money actually go? Well, with this initiative, you actually get to pick where your money goes. You can invest in specific projects. I'll give you the titles right now. For example, you can fund right now a project called Studying Brain Mechanisms Underlying Tourette Syndrome. Another one you can fund directly and immediately is called Studying the Influence of Hormones on the Brain. There's also Studying Brain Imaging to Understand Motor Activity. And the fourth one you can fund right now is Studying Learning Processes to Optimize Treatment Outcomes. All of the above are important for advancements and better treatments for the people who need it, better understanding of our brains and how different things connect, and ultimately a better way of talking about TS to the world. The more we can learn about this mysterious thing, Tourette syndrome, the more we can easily relate it, and ideally the better we all fare. Plus, every time something new comes out about Tourette syndrome, it's always really interesting and seems to have implications. That's a powerful word. Thanks to the Tourette Association of America, who is the sponsor of this podcast. They're online at tourette.org. It'd be kind of funny if they weren't online, but now their website is great. It's easy to navigate for public education and resources for the Tourette community. And of course, ways to get involved, like these opportunities to fund specific research initiatives. Again, tourette.org, tourette.org. So I'll be headed to Los Angeles next week, but I will have, of course, a new episode already in the can at that point. We may miss a line on communication in terms of answering emails on the show. And also anything about Motherless Brooklyn is going to be in the following episode. So stay tuned. I'm really excited about all this. But so I'm going to produce next week's episode early. So if you have a question for Tourette's Podcast, go ahead and get it in. You can do that through tourettespodcast.com. Other ways to reach us, Tourette's Podcast discussion group on Facebook, thanks to Sophia in the UK. She's the admin. And also, when you sign up for the Tourette's Podcast discussion group, it's essential that you answer all 3 questions. It's just a way for us to kind of separate the trolls and the bots from the people who should genuinely be there. And that's every single one of you. Tourette's Podcast is also on Instagram, at Tourette's Pod on Twitter, and patreon.com/Tourette's Podcast to join a really amazing group of supporters of this show whose support truly does elevate this show. I think I said show like 4 times in a row. Ed, Jerry, Sarah, Liam, everybody else, thank you so much. Tourette'sPodcast@gmail.com is how you get up with me directly, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Amanda for being our guest this week. Definitely have a great show lined up for you next week. We'll talk to you soon. This is Ben.